Go for it.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever in the heck in the world you are. It's that time again. It's time for Charles Hugh Smith of Two Minds Blog to join us and to inundate us with the latest musings of one of the most brilliant men, in my opinion, that's out there. Charles, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Good, good, V. I would just say thank you for the nice intro, but I'm just another rogue like you.
That's it, man. We're all voices crying in the wilderness, Charles. We're all voices crying in the wilderness. So, like, I cry a lot and often, so I cry more than others sometimes. But we're just another voice.
Well,
Oh
yeah,
man,
and we're trying to educate people when we
that's
can.
it. It's all about the education process.
Yeah, and so I find a lot of skepticism still whenever I write about Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency space and how important I think it's going to be. And of course, this is nothing special to me. I'm just a amateur observer. But a lot of us see the many ways that blockchain and the cryptocurrencies can play out to the benefit of humanity. And yet there's a lot of skepticism, especially maybe in the older generations, like, wait a minute, this stuff's worthless. And it's all like, you mean like the paper money in your wallet worth something? And so they have a hard time. A lot of people have a hard time wrapping their head around the whole idea that there's actually value here and that it solves business problems and stuff like that. So that's my way of saying that's our rogue education process. Is we just try to give people another perspective on stuff that they've been taught, you know, can't work, is worthless, etc.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Where do you want to pull? Where do you want to? What's the yarn you want to start pulling today, man? And let's see where this thing goes.
Let's talk about the little correction in the cryptocurrency space. 15% on Bitcoin,
Yeah,
20% on some of the other recognized ones.
yeah.
And and of course, where's your ICO, man? I mean, has it launched or?
It's being worked on as we speak. The
All
Gorilla
right.
is coming. It is ready to. It's only used for trading of bananas. You know what? I figured. You know what? There's a pot coin designed for those who are purveyors of marijuana and cannabis. There is a wank coin for those who like to purvey, view, and distribute pornographic adult materials. And I think into this space, this vacuum that has been created, why give Chiquita and Dole all the monopolistic cartel rights over the exchange of bananas? Using the gorilla coin, banana plantation owners from around the world, Charles, can now effectively sell their victuals directly to market, thanks to the gorilla coin. Look for it near you. Coming soon. The ICO is coming. One coin is equal to 20 bushels of bananas, Charles. 20
That's
bushels.
that's a great deal, you
It
know?
is.
I mean, hey, it's backed. It's backed by bananas.
That's it. Why not? Win win. And then I'm going to create the Gorilla Dark Roast ICO, specifically for those purveyors of fine, delectable, hot beverage that is known as dark roast coffee. And it comes in a myriad of flavors from French, Italian, Colombian, Ethiopian, you name it. Guatemalan, it's all there.
That's right, Sumatran. And
Sumatran.
if you launched a coffee coin, I think you'd raise 30 million in, like, 25 minutes, right?
I think I just gave away the farm here, man.
Oh
Companies
man.
listening to this are like, oh, a coffee ICO. That's brilliant. Let me run with it.
Yeah, and we're joking around because there has been like a speculative kind of boom in ICOs where people are. My favorite so far, and I was thinking of you, was some guy that started an ICO so he could buy a Tesla. And I thought, if there was anybody that you would want to sink,
Oh,
that you would want to see his ICO fail, it would be that
yes.
guy.
That is the guy. What is his name and what is his coin so we can short it? We can, it's
I
terrible.
don't. Yeah, I don't know how many he's going to sell because that's pretty. You got no return, right?
No,
But
none
I think
whatsoever.
But the interesting thing here, to me, is that if there's a legitimate business proposition in an ICO, then it's a way for entrepreneurs to completely bypass the charade of venture capital, also affectionately known as vulture capital, because of course the vulture capitalists, their favorite trick is to take 75% of your company because you need them more than they need you. And so the whole idea of an ICO is you bypass that whole thing. You don't have to get on your bended knee to the VC. You don't have to print a bunch of T-shirts and try to go through the crowdfunding things, and you can raise significant bucks without giving away your company to the VCs. And so I'm thinking, wow, this is great. This is something that people should be celebrating. And sure, there's a lot of chaff, a lot of dumb, poor ideas that aren't true business propositions out there trying to sell ICOs, but it's buyer beware. It's up to us to sort it out. But a good business proposition, this is a great advance for small scale capitalism.
Absolutely, man. I totally agree. It's the days of vulture capitalists are over. The days of going into a bank with your, remember those days, man? You used to get your S corp ready. You had your business plan, and you got to go meet with a bank manager. And this little toady of a man, this lackey of a man, has to sit behind a desk and look at you, who has so disinterested in you, and you got to pitch your business plan, and hopefully he'll give you $10,000 at 16%.
Yeah, and then your other option is give away most of your company to VCs whose only interest is to sell your company for their short-term profit, right? And it's all like, hello, you really want those guys as your business partner? No.
No, exactly correct, man. You do not want those guys as your business partner whatsoever. It's because they're looking out for themselves, and I think it's crowdfunding, crowdsourcing, all these wonderful disruptive technologies and inventions that have really changed the game. It's a whole new world, man. I can sense it. I know you feel the same way I do, where it's a whole new paradigm has come upon us, man. It's like, there's a lot of darkness, but the light is starting to come out, and it's always darkest before the dawn. And the dawn, that sun is peaking real bright over the horizon.
Right. And we can talk about a number of different aspects of how the economy is changing, but let's talk a little bit, since it's in the news, that the cryptocurrency space has gotten hammered, right? There's been a decline, 15 to 20, 30%. And before we started recording, you said that you thought this was like a healthy correction and a buying opportunity. And let's talk about that.
Absolutely, man. It really is a buying opportunity. The cryptocurrencies last few months, few weeks have been on a tear. It's been absolutely ballistic, and they had to do a pullback. It's just a natural correction. Guys like yourself, guys like me, and so many others, we knew this was coming. We knew, okay, it's going to be a correction. I'm not going to buy in at $3,000. I'm not going to buy in at 2,900. I'm going to wait until the price pulls back to 26, 25, 24. Then I'm going to see where it's at. I'm going to start buying in. Then it's another buying opportunity, Charles. There's no other way to do it. The smart guys are going to buy in. They're going to make their money. They're going to ride it up again to close to $3,000. They're going to probably sell out over there. Okay, it's just normal. And this is the ride I think it's going to be until February, like what Cliff High says, where we're going to probably hit $13,000 Bitcoin, man.
Right. I totally agree. And technical analysis. There's no perfect system, but it gives us some ideas of support and resistance and that kind of thing. And so the Fibonacci, sequence, stuff tends to fall back like around a third, 37, 38% is normal. It can be half of that. Could be even as deep as 50% on a really a powerful downturn. But in general, all these things are it's healthy, like, in other words, a market that doesn't pause and go back and touch like key support resistance levels and hit the 38% Fibo number and stuff, then that becomes suspect. And so actually, for long-term investors, we want to see the thing retrace to the 50-day moving average, the 38 percent Fibo number. We want to see those kind of pretty deep retraces and establish support, build a base, and then move the next leg up. And so and there's a lot of speculation, in the crypto space, and a lot of people decry that, and I understand, but that's the nature of a transparent market. I mean, there were probably, I am convinced, I am absolutely persuaded that in ancient Sumeria, when they were first recording commodities and trades on cuneiform, on clay tablets, there were speculators then. There was the guy holding up the clay tablet. Hey, I've got wheat here, and he was doing an arbitrage to make a little extra money. So it's comes with an open, transparent market. So actually, speculation is good. The markets we have to be fearful of are the ones that are controlled by insiders, like most of the stock market.
Yep, exactly. That's what the whole entire thing is about. It's about leveling the playing field, and at least we can see that the playing field is level. We can see who's coming in, who's going out, and honestly, you have the right kind of volatility. Real traders, like when we have Dex on, he'll tell you, real traders are not afraid of volatility. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. That means there's actual, especially in the case of cryptos and real commodities that are traded, it shows there's some sort of price discovery that's going on. That shows you that there's activity there. There's life there. If things weren't volatile, then you got a problem. If things weren't being actively traded, there's no speculation, then you got issues.
Right. And I was just writing about the sort of psychological parts of a stock market crash scenario. And, my point was, it's really difficult to identify the top, and especially in a manipulated market like we have now. And of course, everybody that's participating in the stock market, especially the big players and the insiders, they're reading all the same technical signals as the rest of us, right? So they know what to manipulate, right? They know when it hits a key support level, then the plunge protection team goes in and makes sure that it bounces hard off that support, and then all the trading bots, the software jumps in. Hey, it's a buying opportunity, so they know how to work the system. But it's still based partly on human psychology, and so that's what I'm looking for in the market top kind of scenario. And you just pointed out, when there's super low volatility like there is now in the stock market, it's a warning sign, that the thing that either everybody's complacent or it's being manipulated, and there's a lot of complacency. That's a setup for a crash.
Right. Could you walk us through your stock market crash scenario, which is not a question of if, it's just a question of when. So walk us through that, man. I love the chart you have set up here on your website of twominds.com. A stock market crash scenario. Great article, great blog spot, great chart, man. Why don't you just walk us through that, just for the listening audience, so they could kind of visualize in their heads what it looks like.
Okay. What we have at the beginning is what we have right now. Credit growth is weakening. People aren't taking out so much loans. That's a dead giveaway that a recession is imminent, right? Because, people aren't borrowing, then they're not going to be spending in the future. You get a recession. And then auto sales are plummeting. More proof that people have just run out of juice. They can't borrow more or don't want to borrow more. And so rationally, the market should be declining. But instead, it just keeps lofting higher, right? And so this is like a wall of worry, they call it, right? Like, there's all this negative news, and yet markets tend to go higher when there's a big crowd of analysts saying, go to cash, things are dangerous, all the data is ugly. It's like, the market should fall, but instead it just keeps going higher. And so all the bears that bet on a market decline, they all get killed, right? They all get wiped out, or they lose so much money they have to get out. And at that point, when there's no longer a huge short position, and a lot of huge position betting on volatility increasing, well, then we do get a market decline, right? And it's because the market doesn't, reward everybody on one side of the boat. If everybody's betting the market's going to fall, you can bet the market's going to loft higher. It's not going to reward 90% of the people. It just doesn't work that way. So then we get a little air pocket, and then the central banks say some kind of their usual blather about how they're going to do something wonderful and financial easing, blah, blah. So then there's another bounce, the typical, buy the dip bounce. And then they rebuild the worry. And the bears that bet that this was the top, they get killed again, right? And so the basic movement of the psychology of a top is the bears have to be completely wiped out. So there's nobody left. Everybody's been burned so many times, they just give up. And so there's a small short position. It's not like everybody's loaded up and expecting a decline. That means you're not going to get a decline because the market's not going to reward that many people. So there'll be a nominal new high, and it could be later this year, it could be later this summer, it could be the first quarter of next year. I don't know, but there'll be a nominal new high, and everyone will go, see, the market's resilient. Auto sales are plummeting. Credit is declining. There's all this negative news, but the market keeps going higher. See, it's resilient. I feel safe. I feel complacent, and the central banks have my back. That's the setup for a crash when nobody expects it.
Right. Exactly correct. Exactly.
And so then the other part of my scenario is there's always another buy the dip, right? Because the traders they're like Pavlov's dogs, right? They've been trained, buy the dip, buy the dip, buy the dip. You get rewarded, right? So when the market does start rolling over, there'll be another buy the dip thing. It'll go up, and that'll be the classic last exit point. In other words, that little buying spurt will push the market up, and that'll be everybody who's long. That'll be their last chance to exit before the big decline. And then why would the market decline when central banks have been in complete control for 8 years? Well, trading is mostly done by software now. And so at a certain point, all the trading bots will go, wow, we got to exit this position to get rid of our risk, right? To offload our risk. And so they have to liquidate. They're not selling 5% of their portfolio. They're looking at these declines, and their software is telling them, sell the whole darn position, get out, liquidate. Well, since 90% of the trading is done by software, then what do you get? You get a market with no bid. In other words, there's no buyers left because the computers have all decided, hey, we're selling. Don't you, that's what we've been programmed to do. And then the psychology of the remaining humans changes to where people go, I'm afraid now. I no longer believe in the central bank religion, that these guys are gods and they can control the market. And so once they lose that faith, then that's it. There's nobody left. And then you get a huge crash. And I think that's inevitable, within the next year and a half, maybe shorter.
But Janet Yellen will save us. She's a woman that knows what's going on. You can tell by the impish stare in her face. And then you ever look like she's always, when she has that look that she doesn't understand? She always has like a confused look on her face. You ever notice that? Whenever any photo opportunity, anything off camera, any kind of candid shot of her, or when she's talking, she nilts her eyebrows like she's really confused of what's even coming out of her own mouth.
Yeah, it's like she's probably been handed a bunch of different scripts to read, and she's mixed them up.
By Stanley Fisher. Stanley Fisher handed it over to her.
Yeah, and it's clearly that they don't know. Everybody that had any kind of instinct for the market or technical analysis knew the Fed should have been raising rates like 4 or 5 years ago, when the market was strengthening based on actual fundamental strengthening. They had a golden opportunity. They blew it. Now it's too late. And now they're frantic because what are they going to do when the next recession hits, which will be like the end of this year or first quarter of 2018? What are they going to do? Lower interest rates? I mean, if they're near zero already, they got nothing.
Yep.
Yeah. And so they can print money, right? But if nobody's borrowing it anymore, then and spending it, then that's not going to solve anything. And so that's why a lot of us believe that they'll try the helicopter money thing, which is they'll print the money, and they'll find some way to forgive student loan debts, or they'll give everybody $1,000 tax rebate, or they'll try to put money back, actual cash into the consumer's hands, so as a desperate attempt to create spending. But there's so much debt out there that that most people, if they were given $1,000 free and clear, they're going to use a chunk of that just to pay down their existing debt. So there's marginal returns on that kind of helicopter money thing. And then it kind of ties back into the cryptocurrencies, because as the central banks just try to print trillions more of their unbacked currencies, they may get inflation eventually. And if they get inflation, in the cryptocurrencies, especially Bitcoin with its absolute limit on how many can be issued, that could be the trigger to a much higher level, like that you spoke of earlier.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Charles, what else is on your radar, my man?
Well, I did a piece, what I called the Over-Criminalization of American Life. And, kind of beneath the radar, we've become a heavily criminalized society, where there's so many rules, so many regulations, that you're breaking the law. I mean, somebody estimated, most people break a federal or local state law every 3 times a day. Just in your normal life, you do something.
And if you're me, you're breaking at least. If you're like me and Charles, we're breaking at least 50 a day, Charles, on average.
Yeah, and I actually used some cash today, and that's going to be illegal pretty soon too. Yeah,
criminal!
I know it had to be
unpatriotic of you.
It had to be for a drug deal or funding terrorism, right? I mean,
it's one or the other, Charles. You seem like the terroristic jihadi type to me, Charles. I don't know, man. I don't know.
And I also use cryptocurrencies, and we all know they are only for vice too, only for buying drugs or funding terrorism. There's no other use.
I know the Taliban has a deal with Poppy and you. I know it. But hey, why am I complaining? I've done the same, so I'm just as guilty as you are.
Yeah,
we're both insurgent jihadists. We're evil people. That's what we are.
Yeah, and what's so funny is, we're actually legit people, and I've used Bitcoin to pay translators who for my work into Spanish, and editors in other countries and stuff. It's like, hey, this is perfect. Instead of paying like $50 or whatever a wire service fee is, and then filling out a bunch of forms and probably breaking the law because I didn't cross a T or dot an I or something. Then with Bitcoin, it was like, I don't know, 75 cents or $1 or something. And then that's the transaction fee. And so you go, well, what's so difficult to understand about the appeal of this? It's like a huge reduction in cost of transactions. And even with the blockchain being a little slow, hey, if you send a wire, it might take 24 hours to get there.
24 hours? Try sending one a wire internationally. It'll take days. Days. I could transact with somebody in Argentina using Bitcoin, and it's minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Or even if it was an hour, so what? They know they're going to get their money. And so, and it's, so there's huge business advantages to the cryptocurrencies. And I was just reading a thing on China that they're starting to try to, integrate Ethereum into their entrepreneurial space. And, they use, and they use, every mainland Chinese friend of ours uses WeChat, right? It's kind of like a smartphone app that it's sort of
it's kind of like WhatsApp, iMessage, and Facebook Messenger put together.
Yeah, plus you can do banking, and I mean you can pay stuff. So it actually has it's something we don't have here yet. It would be kind of like, and then combining Yelp. So if your Uber driver makes you sit in a bunch of leftover, McDonald's bags or something like that, then you can, on WeChat, you can also diss the guy or whatever. So it's, so they have a lot of micro payment plans in China that work through the banks, and so they're working furiously to create micro payments through the blockchain space and bypass the banks, right? And of course, just like the banks here, the Chinese banks are anxious to get in on this. But it made me aware that in terms of micro payments through cryptocurrencies, China could have a big lead on us, and it's a global phenomenon, is what I'm saying, and we can all learn from whoever's ahead in one particular development or not. But even if you tried, my larger point here is, if you're a really lame, idiotic, destructive government that tries to ban Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, you're basically choosing to impoverish your people, and because your economy is guaranteed to stagnate if you're not going to use the technology that's advancing, and everybody else that's embracing the blockchain and cryptocurrencies is going to be racing ahead. They're going to be lowering their transaction costs. They're going to be creating new jobs in crypto and blockchain development, and so it's really going to be an either or situation. And so those countries that try to limit, to like strangle the crypto space or the blockchain, they're going to suffer economic stagnation, and everybody who embraces it is going to have growth. And so I can only hope that the U.S. is smart enough not to try to limit it to the point where everybody else is going to be way ahead of us.
Yeah, I mean, everybody is. Oh, they're coming for you, Charles. I hear the siren.
I know. They caught me.
They caught you.
I used cash.
You used cash today.
Yeah, and so and so the funny thing is this over-criminalization. It started in the 70s with the fake, destructive, bogus, horrible war on drugs, right? Where guys that sold a nickel bag of dope, were put in prison for like 10, 20 years. I mean, it was like, to me, it was like the Soviet Union gulag, In other words, it's like America's gulag. And because there's the hundreds of thousands, there's 2.3 million people in prison or incarcerated in America. And that's like 4 times as much as there was before the war on drugs and get tough on crime and all that stuff. And of course, we do want to lock up murderers and rapists and stuff. But, I just read a statistic, 60% of the people in prison did a non-violent crime. And so it's all like, and largely drugs, right? So the war on drugs needs to end. It's counterproductive. It doesn't actually, encourage people to not use drugs. It doesn't help people who are addicted. So it's sort of the metaphor in my mind to what the government might try to do to Bitcoin, blockchain, and cryptocurrencies. If they try to ban it, like they're going to ban cash, they're going to find out that you can put a Bitcoin an encryption on a thumb drive. You can take it off the net. Now,
right.
How are they going to trace that?
And Charles, we sell an entire operating system that runs it's a complete OS with web capabilities, with encrypted messaging, and it's a Bitcoin wallet, and it's on mygoldusb.com. And people can go there, they can buy it, they can secure their Bitcoin wallet, they can search, they can surf the dark web, and which is basically what 95% of the internet is. I mean, we only have access to 3 to 5% of the internet. The rest of the 95% we have no access to. It's one of the solutions that people are bringing out there, man.
So it's mygoldusb.com.
And it's only $199. It's a complete OS with a persistent hard drive, a persistent space hard drive built in. It uses 1024-bit encryption. Can you believe that? 1024-bit encryption.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah.
And so because the cryptocurrencies are and the blockchain is decentralized, yep, then the government really can't control it. They can control the channels of money from, like, if you go through like the Bank of America and then you buy some Bitcoin with US dollars, they can trace that transaction because yep, the government can look at that pipe, right? Because there's only the banks have these centralized pipes of money and transactions. But once it's taken off that and put on a USB, then what are they going to do? They're going to send SWAT teams to every house in the neighborhood and try to strip your house to find a USB? I mean, and is UPS going to have to rip open all 10 million packages a day that go to internationally from the US? Or maybe it's 20 million. It's some huge number of packages are delivered globally out of the US. Are they going to open every one and look for a thumb drive? I mean, it's like ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
so stupid. And so this is part of the repression, the financial repression and over criminalization that's sucking the life out of our economy and our society.
Charles, I was amazed by the statistics. I mean, when you look at this, U.S. population increased 43% since 1980, and the prison population has increased by over 400% since 1980. That's just staggering. That's amazing.
Yeah.
The other point I'd like to make too is here in recent news, the student that came back from North Korea that unfortunately that passed away and everything, and you heard across the media, oh, look at North Korea, they're so draconian, and shame on them. But you look at the population, the prison population in the United States. Take a look at some of the political prisoners that we've had. Irwin Schiff, right? For telling people not to pay taxes. The poor guy died in prison. I mean, we're just as guilty of it as well here in the United States.
Right. I mean, look what Edward Snowden, right? I mean, he's considered the worst criminal on the face of the planet because he clued us into a huge government-run, basically illegal spying on citizens. And it's all like, the man's a hero. He should be given the Freedom Medal or whatever it is that the presidents always pass out to some entertainer or something. And so, yeah, that's a very good point. We have political prisoners. We have way too many people that have been convicted of some stupid minor drug offense, nonviolent. And now they're trying to ramp up the same over criminalization in the financial space. If you're a banker and you commit fraud, oh, well, that's too difficult for the feds to prosecute, apparently. Like, how many bankers got arrested and tried and convicted from the 2007, 2008 massive fraud? I mean, was it Bernie Madoff and who else?
Right.
I mean, yeah, when the Texas savings and loan debacle, which was a lot of fraud and collusion, I think several hundred people were imprisoned for their crimes, their white collar crimes, and now that's out. If you're rich and powerful, you get nothing but maybe a wrist slap fine. So we're really ramping up our injustice system, not our justice system.
I mean, there's nothing justice about our system. It is a justice system. It's called the just us system because it's just them that benefit from it, man.
Yeah. That's really well said.
Just us system. And that's why it's like, I mean, you ever wonder why like this crazy lunatic like Hillary Clinton just running around, free as a bird for now, It's unreal, man.
Yeah. And speaking of the just us system, I wrote a piece that said when the system thwarts sincere, hardworking people, the system has failed. And that's another aspect of the failure of the status quo, both in the economy and society, is all of these major systems like education and healthcare and national defense. If you're in those systems and you're trying to do a good job, it's like you're not allowed to do a good job, or there's too many regulations, or if you make a mistake, it's been criminalized. It's like, well, you just made a mistake. Oh no, you broke the law. You're going to go to jail. It's like, what? So good, hardworking people are trying to do a good job, and the system is thwarting them. Like if you guys probably know people that work in higher education. I mean, people have to spend so much of their time jerking around, meeting regulations, going to meetings, checking a bunch of boxes, and then they have their curriculum is like defined, what they have to teach and how they have to teach it. So it's very frustrating if you actually want to teach the kids you have in class, right? And healthcare, the same thing too. There's just pages and pages of more regulations and stuff to fill out. And then, well, if you have any time left after all that, you might be able to care for a patient. And it's sad, you know, it's really sad to see.
Absolutely, man. I agree with you 100%. You know, it's interesting to see how things are or the way things are becoming, because um, there's such a fear now, and it's funny. Like recently, there's a bill that's been introduced by the idiots that are in what I call Mogadishu on the Potomac, which is Washington D.C. So it was introduced by the idiots, by the warlords. Okay, the warlords on the Mogadishu and the Potomac, they've come out with a bill to go after Bitcoin. And it's funny, you look at the wording of the language. The wording of the language there, it's as if Bitcoin has an issuing bank. It's as if there's a central bank out there that issues Bitcoin that they're going to go after. These idiots don't realize how even a blockchain works, and they're writing legislation against it, which means the legislation need not apply because the terms don't fit what they're accusing the financial instrument of doing. The most funniest thing, Charles, but it just shows you that these guys are absolutely out of their minds.
Right, right. And they're clueless, and yet they're desperate to impose some sort of central control. And I understand and why the government needs to raise taxes, right? Or they tax us, they tax income and capital gains, because there are legitimate purposes for government, right? I mean, we can argue about that, like that the government's too big, too powerful. Absolutely true. But so we can look ahead and go, if people are trading cryptocurrencies, that's eventually going to be taxed, like trading coffee futures, you know, or stock options. I mean, anything that you're making money with, you're going to pay some tax on. Hey, I got no problem with that. I don't see cryptocurrencies as like a tax evasion thing. Although I suppose if you took your thumb drive to the Cayman Islands, and you could certainly use it that way. But I think that's a focus on that's like saying people use cash to do illegal things. Well, yeah, that's right. But that doesn't negate the value of cash for the 99% of us who are just basic, honest people who are just trying to, do our jobs well and live our lives, right? We're not trying to scam anybody or rip the system off. And so that's where I see the emphasis shouldn't be on the possibility that cryptocurrencies could be used illegally to evade taxes like cash, but more like, look at the opportunity to create a lot of new business that's going to pay more tax. In other words, like developing new uses for the blockchain. That's going to create economic growth that's way more valuable to the government than a few warlords who figured out some way to evade taxes, which they do anyway, right? They don't need cash and Bitcoin to evade taxes. They just go and buy a loophole from a congressperson, right? I mean, Apple pays no tax in Europe or whatever. I mean, hey. Yeah. And so anyways, my point is that a smart government will encourage the development of cryptocurrencies and blockchain.
You mean like China and Russia? You mean crazy governments, these tyrannical communistic governments like them?
Well, I wanted you to go on about, you were saying that people have a fear, and I think that that's really core to this whole discussion we're having about criminalization of everyday life. And say a little more about that, because I think people are fearful, and not of terrorism, but of their own government and over-regulation.
Yeah.
And of the sense that they're losing control.
Yeah, I mean, people are, the fear is this. There's those fear who, I don't know what it is, man. I think there's many layers to it. Right now, the establishment is very fearful because they've lost control. They're scrambling to put the genie back in the bottle. The genie just won't go in. And that genie is the new multipolar world that is already here. It's here. It's not like it's emerging. It might be there in 10, 20. The multipolar world is here. and we're seeing evidence of that all throughout the entire world. I think London Paul spoke best upon it, about it this morning. But when you look at the masses, you got most of the masses that are awake and they get it. They understand something's wrong. There's a shift towards nationalism. Then you have the other side, which is they're awakened, but they're fearful. They're fearful because they still think that these cabal or cabalist members, these crazy, insane establishment types, are still calling the shots. And I think that's the biggest hurdle that we're facing today is to dispel the fear. There is no fear. Go forth, be epic. Seize the day. Yes, there's going to be a market collapse coming. When will that be? I don't know. I think, Charles, you said it best. At $20 trillion in debt at 0% interest, it's really nothing.
Yeah.
And so my whole thing is it's eventually going to come, but during the time that we have, I mean, rather than being paralyzed in fear, take advantage of this time. Be productive. Don't waste a single second. And if people could stop doing that and go forth and be productive and start making investments, start making moves, they'd be better prepared for whatever the heck it is going to come, so they can better transition out. It's a great time to buy assets, man. I think because right now when this collapse happens, I look at it as an opportunity. I'm like, oh, good. There's going to be more stuff for me to buy because I'm in cryptos, I'm in metals. Can't wait for the party to start.
Right. And one of my guidelines to figure out how to pursue the path you just described, like what assets should I buy or own? You just look at what super wealthy people own. They own land, forest, they own gold. And I think there's little hints here and there that the super wealthy and the corporate elites are getting interested in Bitcoin and the cryptocurrencies, right? And so once that crowd starts adding a piece of the cryptos to their asset base, then you could really see a major leap. And those people buy and hold. They're not trading. That if they start buying, cryptocurrencies, they're burying it. Basically, it's part of their stash, right? And so that removal of Bitcoin from the trading universe, it reduces the amount of Bitcoin that's available, right? And so it's like scarcity will drive prices higher. And so and when I talk about this kind of thing that you're describing, like it's an opportunity to get to buy tools, own land, pay off your house, this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And people skeptics will tell me, well, the government will go out and they'll send somebody out to expropriate your skill saw or something. And it's all like, I understand the point, which is the government gets more and more repressive as it gets more fearful, right? And it wants to steal more from its citizens as its natural reaction to being fearful, right? Let me go steal more. But they kind of forget that the government, it doesn't have endless hordes of people. We've seen too many World War II movies or something where there's like an endless supply of Nazi soldiers to go in and rummage through every house in the country. It's like, no, that's not going to work. It takes a huge amount of very expensive labor to go on a house-to-house search to steal my skill saw because I forgot to register my tool or whatever the regulation might be. So most of the regulations and laws require voluntary compliance because they simply don't have enough people to enforce all these laws and regulations. Kind of like we were talking about, well, how are they going to track all the thumb drives in the world that might have a Bitcoin on them? It's impossible. And so my point is that, own the assets that are politically sacrosanct. Like they can't be stealing people's houses. They can raise your property tax. And so you want to own property in states that have some sort of property tax limits. But they can't just go steal people's houses. There would be an instant revolution, right? That's one of the bedrock things. And so anyways, follow what rich people are doing. And I think, I bet you anything that the super wealthy advisor types are now saying, hey, I think we better explore this Bitcoin thing.
Yeah, exactly correct. It's the time for getting assets is right. It's coming soon, man. And you know what's the Chinese word for crisis? It also means opportunity, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
It also means
And
opportunity. And I think the greatest opportunity is coming, Charles.
yeah, absolutely. And I wrote a piece recently that talks about what you're really describing, which is we know that we're in like a crisis mode of decline that's going to lead to some sort of financial collapse, right? And it may not mean that there's no food or anything, but it certainly means that all these sort of phantom wealth will vanish, right? And so I wrote a piece called "The Dead Giveaways of Imperial Decline." And of course, there's a lot of history and a lot of historians who have analyzed, how do empires decline and fall, right? And so we know that there's a couple of indicators here, and I'll just read a couple of them. One is stagnating wages due to oversupply of labor, right? In other words, people just make less money. There's too many people in the workforce and not enough paid work. Number two, overproduction of parasitic elites. That's my favorite. That's your warlords on the Potomac, right?
Yeah.
Too many parasitic elites sucking the economy dry.
Yeah.
Then deterioration of central state finances. In other words, the government's broke. It's insolvent. And like you said, 20 trillion in debt, 10 trillion added in the last, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. And and what, they're going to double that, triple that. Oh, we can borrow 100 trillion and there's never any consequence. That's not the way the world works, right? So these are signs that history tells us are important way stations on the move from decline to collapse. So we can we can be afraid of it, or as you say, we can look at it as an opportunity. And it's going to happen. There's nothing anybody can do to stop it, because the rot is too deep.
Yeah, exactly correct. And the rot's already. It's like I gave the example, this morning. It's like you have a dead body, and it's dead, and the doctors are trying to convince everybody, no, it's still alive. They got like this bogus EKG machine hooked up to the dead body, and it's like, boop, boop, boop. Look, he's 77 BPM. He's totally fine. And here's the fake blood pressure machine. Oh, he's 120/80. He's totally normal. We just got his lab. It's like fake, fictitious, metrics that are just coming out, and that's like the government talking heads. But the body's dead. The physical economy's been dead for a while. It's been dead since 2008. It's never really got back up. It's only getting worse. We're just waiting for the electronic duct tape to finally come down, Charles. And that's what it is. It's the electronic duct tape that's keeping the entire thing together.
No, I love your analogy. It's brilliant, because it's like the EKG machine is like unemployment. Hey, it must be the economy's doing great because look at how low unemployment is.
Yeah.
Right. And then, or like volatility in the stock market. Hey, the VIX is like 11. It must mean the market's roaring, because and so they have all these fake signals, and it's pretty easy to engineer those fake signals to make it look like the dead body is still alive. But yeah, what a great metaphor.
Yep, absolutely correct, man. Charles, we got about 5 minutes left, man. Why don't you plug your social media, how people can follow you, how they can contact you, and keep in connection with you.
Okay, please visit me at of2minds.com or Charles Hugh Smith blogspot.com, and you can read free chapters of my books, look at my archives, and find links to my Facebook feed and Twitter feed. And I would really appreciate anybody who's interested in the farther reaches of cryptocurrency to look at my idea for a labor-backed cryptocurrency. In other words, a cryptocurrency that's issued when people do useful work in their own community. And in other words, it's their labor that's backing, because they're creating some goods and services by their labor. That labor is then paid with a cryptocurrency, and that's not bought with some other cryptocurrency or with fiat currency. It's issued to the people who did the actual work. And I think this is a powerful potential use for cryptocurrencies is paying people for doing useful work, and they don't need to. There doesn't have to be a corporation that borrows money and then creates a factory or something. Why not just pay people for doing useful work? And that's what's in short supply right now, is paid work. So
Yep.
we could use cryptocurrencies to do that, and it wouldn't be money that was borrowed into existence like fiat currencies. It would simply be issued, you know.
Yep.
And it wouldn't be issued for nothing. It would be in exchange for useful labor. So, anyways, that's an idea that is one example of how cryptocurrencies and blockchains could really transform our economy in a positive way.
Absolutely, man. Very well said. And with that being said, guys, you can follow us on roguemoney.net and check us out right here on this channel. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the notification bell, and help support us and all the guests that come on here, guys like Charles. Again, check out Charles' work. Amazing writing, just a brilliant mind. With that being said, thank you all for listening in, and Charles will be back again next month to update us all on the latest going-ons and happenings. With that being said, we're over and out. Take it away, CJ.